So this is a video that shows you how to draw energy, biomass and numbers pyramids. Now this potentially could be a question that you get in the exam, so I'd strongly suggest you use pen and paper to answer this, just so you get into the habit of actually setting it out on a piece of paper. Now I've got it's a food web, but a food chain I guess, with 4 different trophic levels. I've got a tree, I've got ants that live in that tree, I've got a spider that eats those ants, and I've got a bird that eats that spider. So it's very simplified here. And knowing what we know about trophic levels, we know that we can only get 10%, and we'll put it up here as a little reminder, 10% of energy from both from the producers to the consumers and so on. Alright, so we're going to start with our energy pyramid here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a ruler and I'm going to measure out that space. Alright, so I don't have a ruler right now, but I would strongly recommend that if you're doing it on a piece of paper, probably make it 15 centimeters wide. So I'm going to do my first bar here. Okay, so my first bar needs some space for my biomass. Here's my first bar for my energy pyramid. Alright, and this I'm going to label as producers. Now this is important. If you wanted to, you could put your label off to the side here and label it as P. In the exam you will get penalised if you don't put your producers and second order and forward, so on with your consumers. Now with our energy we know that we can only get 10% of from one trophic level to the next. And so in an exam that's pretty hard to do if you've got more than 3 trophic levels. So rule of thumb is it needs to be at least a third smaller than the overall, so it needs to be a third or smaller of the first bar. So here I'm going to try my darndest here to make, okay, so that's at least least smaller than a third, okay, and I'm going to put here consumer 1. See how it's going to become harder to put it in the bars there, and you'll notice that my bars are the same depth or the same height. Obviously the width changes, but they don't get any thicker or any thinner, they stay the same. They only get wider or shorter. So here I'm going to put up, so that's my ants, and then again I'm going to try and make this quite small here. This is going to be my C3, which is my spiders, because I can only transfer 10% of my energy from my producers to my first order consumers to my second order consumers, and then to my third order consumers, which are going to be my birds. I've written that, that should be 2. My third order consumers here is going to be C3. So try and make sure that they're lining up there. That's pretty much how you do an energy pyramid. Some of the most common mistakes is making it look really pretty like this, which isn't correct, and we know this isn't correct because that's not 10% of the layer below. So we want to make sure that we're using one, or trying to make it as accurate as possible to keep it to about 1/10 of the bar below. So that's our energy pyramid. Our next pyramid here is our biomass pyramid. Now this is going to be pretty similar here. The only time where you would see a biomass pyramid that might look a little bit different, or it might look like this, is because in a marine environment the producers down here are going to be reproducing at a really rapid rate. So it doesn't necessarily matter that there's not that many of them because they're getting consumed as they're actually producing. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes marine environments will have a biomass pyramid that might look a little bit inverted. With our energy and our biomass, another thing that we might want to label here is our trophic level 1, trophic level 2, trophic level 3 and trophic level 4. That depends on what the question is asking for. So it might not ask for producers and consumer orders, it might ask for the trophic levels, in which case make sure that you're writing trophic levels rather than producer, consumer 1, 2 and 3. With our biomass, again, make our base nice and big because we've got quite a big biomass with this tree. I'm going to put this as P down the side, and you might even want to label in these organisms. It does depend on the question, but I'm going to make sure that you're keeping your labels and your accurate layers here. Alright, so my ants, again, biomass is pretty much the same rule as energy, because we can't really transfer that much biomass without also transferring energy. So our biomass is going to stick again to this 10% rule, okay, and so on, C2 and C3, okay. You do need to know a bit about these organisms. If you don't know what the organisms are, look them up, okay, because if you don't understand how these organisms interact, you may make a small mistake. Obviously in an exam they shouldn't give you anything that you need to research, they should give you all these supporting information. Now the last one, got our energy and our biomass, again look really similar because they both kind of follow that 10% rule. Numbers, this is where it gets a bit different. Numbers, I've got one tree. Then, in terms of ants, I might have 5,000 ants. Okay, and so we start getting into a bit of an inversion here. Then with spiders, we might have 100 spiders, and then with birds, we might have 10. Okay, so the 10% rule doesn't really apply in numbers, and that's why our energy pyramid might be much more powerful to tell us about how that ecosystem is functioning, rather than our numbers pyramid, which just purely tells us the number of organisms, which can really vary according to what kind of ecosystem we're talking about, and can get really blown out when we're looking at things like insects, parasites, and also really large organisms like trees. That is energy, biomass, and numbers pyramids. And I also probably should write my labels here, which are P, C1.